bill would make the wind turbines real property. And this is from Wind Watch on May 7th, and, just a couple weeks ago. This is from the Huron Daily News. State Senator Mike Green intends to introduce a bill to change the designation of wind turbines from personal property to real property. Turbines are currently classified industrial personal property and only pay personal property taxes. If the legislature votes to eliminate the personal property taxes, areas with wind farms will lose all tax benefits that would receive from future wind developments. The combined 2011 taxable value of two existing wind developments in Huron County is more than $108.7 million. Because wind turbines are considered industrial personal property, they also are exempt from state education tax, local school operating tax. Also, their taxable values depreciate rapidly, resulting in local communities initially collecting large sums of revenue and the amount dwindling each consecutive year. If the wind turbines are considered real property, they would pay the same taxes that a house would be assessed at per 4. Okay. That's it.
Well, in the packet of information I got from Great Lakes Wind Exelon, I got the guidelines for community noise. And they went and had this table in here, and I read through it, and it goes and coincides basically with everything here, but my only confusing aspect was it was page number 15 out of an entire report. So I went online and looked at the entire report, which I printed off here. And, you know, I just wanted to understand what the table was all about, basically, and it didn't give me any clues on what the table was about. And so I went back, you know, when I started looking at this, and this is the guidelines for community noise for the World Health Organization. And it has in here about adverse effects of noise, and I thought this was, you know, pretty important that they didn't add this to it, because we'd asked for problems with noise and whether or not it had health effects on noise, and they, you know, they claim about the community noise, they claim that, you know, that the noise is in effect, but there's a lot of things in here that are highlighted basically on community noise, and they're basing a lot of their information off of the guidelines on community noise. And so, you know, it basically goes into, you know, and this is from 1999, and it's you know, it talks about with school and stuff, speech intelligibility, and then sleep disturbance is one I highlighted. This article had already been highlighted, so I highlighted the stuff that I thought was more, because some of this is for interior noise problems and everything with, you know, schools and stuff like that, which on the interior we're not dealing with that necessarily. There's no schools in the area, maybe a daycare or something, but Blissfield is there. But you know what I mean, but this is for indoors noise to do that, not necessarily exterior noise causing problems. But like for sleep disturbance, it says here, for a good night's sleep, the equivalent sound level should not exceed 30, like they're saying, for continuous background noise. Continuous background noise. So, you know, seeing as how a wind turbine doesn't make continuous background noise, it makes a 1 second on, 1 second off type thing, you know, and individual noise events exceeding 45 decibels should be avoided. In setting limit for single nighttime noise exposure, the intermittent character of noise has to be taken into account. This can be achieved, for example, by measuring the number of noise events, as well as the difference between the maximum sound level and the background sound level. Special attention should also be given to noise sources in an environment with low background sound levels and combinations of noise and vibrations, and noise sources with low frequency components, which this is what the turbines, and they admitted that they have those. Here we have low background. Then there's another section here on mental illness. Now mental illness, in here it says, environmental noise is not believed to cause mental illness directly, but it is assumed that it can accelerate and intensify the development of latent mental disorders. Exposure to high levels of occupational noise have been associated with development of neurosis, but finding environmental noise and mental health effects are inconclusive. Nevertheless, the study on the use of drugs such as tranquilizers and sleeping pills, on psychiatric symptoms, and on mental hospital admission rates suggests that community noise may have adverse effects on mental health. Then under social behaviors for effects of noise, under annoyance. Noise above 80 decibel may also help reducing behavior to increase aggressive behavior. There's a particular concern with a high level continuous noise exposure may increase susceptibility to school children to feeling helplessness, but that's 80 decibels. Stronger reactions have been observed when noise is accompanied by vibrations and contains low frequency components, or when the noise contains impulses such as shooting noise or wind turbines. I added that, sorry. Temporary stronger reactions occur when the noise exposure increases over time compared to a constant noise exposure. Then there's interference with speech perception more for schools. Reading acquisition, there's issues with reading acquisition in there. In schools and preschools, there's a whole section in there, but also other, in dwellings, they say 30 decibels, LAEQ for continuous noise 45, like they're saying. Outside an open window is 15 decibels. To enable casual conversation during daytime, the sound level of interfering noise should not exceed 35. The maximum sound pressure should be measured with a sound meter set at fast. But then to explain the table that they gave us, and they gave the township board also, it says Table 1 presents the WHO guideline values arranged according to specific environments and critical health effects. The guidelines values consider all identified adverse health effects for a specific environment. And adverse effects of noise refers to any temporary or long-term impairment of physical, psychological, or social function that is associated with noise exposure. Specific noise levels have been set for each health effect using the lowest noise level that produces an adverse health effect, the critical health effect. Although the guideline values refer to sound levels impacting the most exposed receiver at the listed environments, they are applicable to the general population. The time base for an LAEQ for daytime and nighttime is 12 to 16 hours and 8 hours respectively. No time base is given for evenings, but typically the guideline value should be 5 to 10 decibels lower than the daytime. So from the 45 they're suggesting daytime, it should be for the evenings 5 to 10 decibels according to the World Health Organization. Other time bases are recommended for schools, preschools, playground, and dependent on the activity. It is not enough to characterize the noise environment in terms of noise measurements or indices based only on energy summation, the LAEQ, which is what they constantly talk about. Because different critical health effects require different descriptions, it is equally important to display the maximum values of a noise fluctuations, preferably combined with the measure of number of noise events. A separate characterization of nighttime noise exposure is also necessary. For indoor environments, reverberation time is also an important factor for things such as speech intelligibility. If the noise includes a large portion of low frequency components and still lower guidelines, still lower guideline values should be applied. So what they're saying in this guideline here, that with low frequency, that it should be lower than what these guidelines are that they always talk about. If the noise includes, the supplementary to the guideline values given on Table 1, precautions should be taken for vulnerable groups and for noise of certain character. Example, low frequency components and low background noise. So this is what the developers gave us with this, and that's a summation of that. And then in the end, it goes and talks how noise management should take place, conclusions and recommendations, and then research and development. A major step forward in raising the awareness of both the public and of decision makers, and a recommendation to concentrate more research and development on variables which have monetary consequences. This means the research should consider not only dose-response relationships between sound levels, but also politically relevant variables such as noise-induced social handicap, reducing productivity, decreased performance in learning, workplace and school absenteeism, increased drug use and accidents. So that's what the rest of this report, and there's more to it, if you guys want to look it up online or there's the copy, but that's what the developer gave. This is what we have. Let's see, and then this is basically from Tech Environmental. 40 decibel limit is basically, this is the one that they gave to the Riga Planning Commission. 40 decibel is limit is low based on the current World Health Organization. The World Health Organization recommends a daytime outside sound level should not exceed 45 decibels LAQ, so that people may sleep in bedroom windows. But what that doesn't say is that there's low frequency noise like the World Health Organization says, and there's also low relative background noise in this area, so that should be lower than what he's suggesting on here. So then I have a case study from the EPA, an EPA wind farm project for open space site noise evaluation measurement criteria. This was done in Taiwan. The goals, although wind energy is a renewable energy, there are shortcomings. Wind farms are often considered to be eyesores in what are mainly rural landscapes. Other worries include the noise generated by turbines and the resulting devaluation of nearby property. To be able to understand the noise impact on the environment and its residents, EPA has initiated a project to study the noise impact and implement a procedure for on-site monitoring of wind noise generated by operating wind farms. Phase 1 of the project was carried out in 2009. Phase 2 of the project was started in 2010 and will continue until 2011. The goal of the EPA project was to find out the actual noise level of wind turbines and to set up suitable noise measuring procedure for open space and site facilities. The project also conduct noise measurement and evaluation of sensitive spots as a result of complaints from local residents. To achieve the goal, the EPA deemed it necessary to measure 10 wind turbines at 10 noise-sensitive locations. When the measurements were completed, the wind turbines' noise levels were correlated with wind speed. At the high wind speed, the noise levels exceeded 60 decibels, and frequencies were mainly between 20 hertz and 1 kilohertz. Following this, 10 houses situated close to the wind turbines were selected and the noise level measured. The results primarily showed low frequency noise below 100 hertz, and the difference between indoor and outdoor measurements was only 10 decibels, according to what the World Health Organization said in '99. They're saying here with this new study that it's only 10 decibels. So sleep disturbance is at 30, but they're saying at 45 decibels, as developers are suggesting, 10 decibels would only make it down to 35. There were some measurement criteria for the standard that were applicable. For example, placing the microphone in a round plate with a double shield windscreen on the ground that reduces the wind noise generated at the microphone and minimize the influence of different ground types. Wind speed dominates the measurement, so placing microphone on the ground is necessary compared to having it up in the air, like Mr. Goldberg talks about. And a suitable windscreen is also required, which Mr. Goldberg said the windscreen wasn't necessary because he's trying to measure wind sound. And low frequency is a concern but difficult to measure. So that's basically that study there. Then we have this memorandum from San Diego State University that the developers gave us. And it's from Mark Thayer, and he was one of the principals that went and did the impact on wind power projects on residential property values by the multi-site hedonic analysis by Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And what I was troubled with this one was, in doing my due diligence, and particularly Lenawee County, Michigan is a dead ringer for the average and composites of the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab site, except that it's slightly less populated on either an aggregate or per square mile basis, see table below. In addition, a recent tour of the proposed area has confirmed that the landscape and land use patterns, which I agree with them, essentially flat, rural and agricultural land, was very much like several studies on the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. But, like he didn't do in the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab study, which I found, is that he didn't go far enough with that, because he's given us Lenawee County statistics here. Now, what I did is I went to Google Earth, and I went and counted, but on top of it, I went and got this off the census. And we have I went and figured out, without including Ogden Township, we had 8 to 9 houses per square mile here. And according to the census, we have 9.5 houses per square mile, which that includes Ogden Center. So at 9.5, so then I went through the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab study, and I Google Earth every site where there was a wind turbine. It took me 6 to 8 hours. And they give us the maps of where the turbine's siting and everything. And I went through it and I went and checked to see, you know, there were similarities in these that were rural agriculture and everything. But when you're thinking of property values, when do you go and take into consideration how many houses are in that square mile? Now we have 9.5 houses according to the census. According to this one in Madison County, New York, they only have Google Earth as 2 to 3 houses per square mile. And this one here in Buena Vista County, Iowa, they only have 2 to 3 houses per square mile.